Welcome to the Lessons for Luca podcast. I'm your host, Michael Santi, author of New Man Emerging, transformational coach and trainer, and most importantly, I'm Luca's dad. I want to do a short series on some key distinctions around transformation and around coaching. And it's the distinctions that I take a lot of my approach with, a lot of my fundamental foundations, I think potentially makes my approach a bit unique and distinct. And it's the approach of utilizing natural law. So what do I mean by natural law? The way that we want to break this down to really make it usable and orchestrate transformation and a really good, well-lived life with, we want to break it down into three distinctions. The first distinction is what's called personal law. So personal law or personal truth. Personal law is really the way that you govern the world and your life by. It is your personal unique experience, your personal history, your personal worldview, your conditioning, your historical context, the way that you relate to yourself, the way that you relate to life, the way that you relate to the world and others. That's your personal law. That's your personal truth. That personal truth and that personal law is ever evolving. Your personal truth and personal law in your teens and 20s is and should most likely be distinct and different and evolved than in your 60s and 70s. It's malleable, your personal law. It's adaptable, it's evolvable, and it evolves with us personally throughout the course of our life. And it's the way that we interact and interface with ourselves and with the world. That's personal law. Second is what's called cultural law. Cultural law is really how do we as a people organize. Personal law or personal truth is really our collective cultural story, our collective political stories, our collective religious stories, our collective way of organizing as a species or as a culture. So there's cultural law and cultural truth in America, which is distinct from China, which is distinct from Norway, different regions of the world. Also, that cultural law, cultural truth is ever evolving. It is collectively who we say we are as an organizing species. And in the 60s, we looked at things a certain way, and now we look at things a different way, and we amend laws, we amend our constitutions, we amend our old declarations. They evolve with us. And as that evolves and we organize, we're organizing in those political stories, cultural stories, those religious stories. They're a way that we organize and live collectively together. But again, those are evolving. So there's personal law, cultural law, and the third is natural law. Natural law is unchanging. Natural law is unmovable. Natural law isn't evolving. Natural law simply is. And gravity doesn't care whether or not you believe in it. Natural law and Mother Nature doesn't care who's elected. Mother Nature doesn't care about inflation or economy. She simply operates in this beautiful mosaic of chemistry and physics and phenomena and consciousness that's just constantly orchestrating itself through the laws that are built into the universe. And natural law is unmovable. Natural law is not evolving. Natural law was relevant 1,000 years ago. Natural law will be relevant 1,000 years from now. Where we suffer personally and collectively is we try to make and move and adapt natural law into our own personal law. And that is like trying to take something immovable and make it movable. Where we become successful as a human being, where we become aligned as a human being, where we really live a good, deep, rich, and meaningful life is when we actually adapt our personal law to natural law. And the series I want to do in the next coming weeks and the next coming episodes is really highlighting and defining certain natural laws to orient your life around. Remember, we want to honor what's immovable and then orchestrate and orient our life around what's immovable. The opposite is suffering. When we try to make certain things that are immovable, movable, we're trying to control what we can't control. And that leads to anxiety and it leads to chaos. Also, if we don't have in life an immovable force that we orient our life to, that's like being out at sea in a storm and having no lighthouse to guide you. And if the lighthouse was changing constantly after every wave, you would be left in anxiety and chaos. Having something immovable gives our life something to orient around. And natural law, natural truth, to me is the most effective way to tap into a greater sense of potential and meaning of who we are as a human being. And to actually let my own personal law, my own personal truth evolve and adapt over time to that which is unchanging. And the first law that I want to highlight and distinguish is the natural law of impermanence. The natural law of impermanence is written into the universe, and it simply means this too shall pass. Nothing is permanent. Everything is temporary. This will change. When we understand and orient our life around the natural law of impermanence, we actually live with a deeper malleability, a deeper flexibility, understanding that this is going to change. I always love, there's a quote by Robert Frost. He was asked, "What have you learned about life?" And he said, "I can learn everything I've learned about life in 3 words. It goes on." That's the law of impermanence, that we are caught in this moment of time and just simply a steward of a temporary flame that's within us. And to work with that flame, to nurture that flame and know that there's a temporariness to all of this. That is to actually engage with a whole different level of awareness and presence and meaning. For my people right now that are suffering and struggling, this will pass. For my people that are succeeding and they're on top right now, this will pass. Nothing is permanent. Right now, my house and my life and my home is filled with giggles and diaper changes and little temper tantrums and little smiles and cute snuggles that I just want to absorb as much as I can. And in the back of my mind, I know one day my son is going to be grown up, leaving the house, living a life of his own. I know that this is temporary. I know that I can't capture and hold on to this moment in time, only in my memory, only in my heart. That this moment in time is a fleeting phenomena. And it reminds me a lot of the Stoics, where when the warriors would come home from battle and when they were victorious, they would have parades for the warriors, and they would be celebrated and cheered and revered and admired, and they would have a parade, and they would have one slave whose one job was to remind and whisper in the ear of the great warrior, "Thou art mortal. Memento mori. You remember you must die." To constantly remind that great warrior that at the height of your life, this is fleeting. You're mortal. This will not last forever. And the goal for orienting our life around the natural law of impermanence isn't to be morbid. It's not to be depressed. It's not to grant anxiety or give a window into anxiety. It's actually to acknowledge the reality that my life is fleeting, that although life may be long, it goes fast. And to live in a state that even in my struggles, I understand this is impermanent. That even in my glory, I understand this will ebb and flow. And so what that does is that allows me a different way of interacting, knowing that everything is temporary. The lesson here is, when in doubt, zoom out. When in doubt, take a longer perspective and lens of your life in this moment in time. If you're struggling, it'll pass. If you're winning, it'll pass. Orient your life around knowing that everything is impermanent. And this way, engage with things from a whole new perspective, knowing this is going to pass. For my life right now, understanding that even in the sleepless nights, even in the challenges of having a young one, like understanding and knowing one day I'll miss this. One day there won't be toys to step on. One day there won't be cries to go and in the middle of the night and go support and nurture. One day the house will be quiet. One day it'll just be my wife and I. One day it'll maybe just be me or just her. And again, that's not to invite anxiety, but to actually engage with reality. Remember, natural law is immovable. Natural law teaches us that this too will pass. And so to engage with things from a perspective that the things that we, once cried about, one day we'll laugh about. The things that we go so far out of our way to accomplish and to purchase, like one day all my trinkets and all the things that I've gathered will be sold for pennies on the dollar in a flea market one day. And the story behind them will be lost on the person walking right by them. And so it's to engage in the moment and laugh more often, to understand that everything's impermanent, to not be so serious about trying to control everything, to realize that, again, we're just stewards of this short passage of time that we find ourselves in this form of consciousness and phenomena, and to not take our life so seriously, to not try to control everything, and to understand that sometimes the greatest effort is just letting go and letting things be, and engaging with life with relaxation and with acknowledging its beauty and acknowledging its temporariness. In my book, the section that I call Keep Your Death Close. Keep your death close means that if death were close, how differently would you love? How would you speak to the people around you? How would you remind the people you love that you love them? Would you put certain things off? Would you procrastinate making that phone call, writing that letter, sending that email? If death were close, how would that change the way that you orient your life now? And that's what the natural law of impermanence teaches us. Again, one day, all these things that I strive for, and there'll be trinkets in a flea market only 100 years from now, less than 100 years from now, but people won't even potentially even know my name, potentially even my great-grandchildren. Again, like that's to remind us and give us perspective that this moment, although fleeting, is golden. It has beauty and consciousness and opportunity all built in right here and now. So be careful of those things that you try to put off. Be careful of those things that you try to control and suffocate here and now, because it will pass. Thou art mortal. Remember, you must die. Engage with this moment here, understanding that this won't last forever. And how will that orient or reorient you to the way that you engage with it? How big does that make the actual problem? Knowing that there's things that you thought were going to break you that you have long outlived. So the natural law of impermanence is to just help us reorient our life, that nothing is permanent, nothing lasts forever, and nothing can be controlled in this moment in time forever. So let go a bit, relax a bit, and engage with this moment from a newfound presence, knowing it's all fleeting. And orient your life around what will that mean in the long horizon of my life. What will matter? What will be significant and substantial and purposeful? And have that be what you orient your life around. There's a great quote in the book Illusions by Richard Bach. And it simply says, what the caterpillar calls the end of the world, the master calls a butterfly. And as we orient our life around everything is impermanent, we can let go a bit, we could relax, we could surrender to the moment, we could be present to the magnificence that this life has to offer us. And so that's the natural law of impermanence. Whether we believe in it or not doesn't matter. Mother Nature is patient. She bats last, and she's batting 1,000. She always wins. Let's orient our life around what's unchangeable so that we can keep on continuing to unlock these secrets that are written into the universe. Those are natural laws. So use this natural law of impermanence to create more aliveness, knowing that everything will pass. Again, as always, thank you for being on this journey with me. Until we meet again, be a good man, live a good life, and determine each of those for yourself.